Hello. So today I'm just gonna make a small spotlight on Rudiel. She's not a character that is actually overviewed by the majority of the community. She's a player that you're gonna commonly see on Wormwin, mainly Wormwin mono teams. She's a pretty decent backline stealer. She has good reflex, and the one thing is she doesn't actually have a line buff. But her damage reduce allows her to be that one defender who survives till the end. So what you're going to want to do is actually put her on the right back, as very few strikers actually are positioned in front of that. So that's actually pretty nice that her perfect position is there, and it's going to give her a bonus in reflex, live, defense, steal, and pass. So I'm going to go to skills and stones after I do the links, as she is not EE in my case, so I'm going to be going to the player book. So she has an EE, by the way, if that's a question. So link-wise, her first link is utterly useless, unless you're doing PV, and even then. And second link, to when there are factions, so they need to be on your team, this is really bad. Now, these are the two important links. The first one is her friendship. You do have to point out that she's a defender, so she's getting attack power and crit rate. In her case, crit rate's actually valuable, but it's still something very low. You know, a nemesis or a rival chain would actually have been much more interesting. And she does have a nemesis chain with Magnus, who is fairly common in backlines, as he has some decent hype and some elemental resist buff. So I'm going to say on her chains, those are the only two that matter. The other two have no value. I don't remember having her having at any point a skin, so that should not be a problem. So here's her EE version. I actually find that the way that the skin went up is actually very nice. So just on a graphical aspect, it's pretty nice. So again, put her in the right back. So on skill-wise, if it's up to me, I'm gonna say her active is the most useless one, because since when do backline defenders steal? I mean, 80% of the time there's a pass, people shoot, and then you try to get out of there. So in my opinion, the first active is the last one you're going to be boosting, unless you have something that reduces action bar some way for her to be fast enough to actually steal before the passer. So if you're really running a speed totem or something like that in backline, ignore everything I've just said. If you're not, I would say this is the last skill to upgrade. For her second skill, it's going to be a recover action bar and spirit with an attack. This is actually what you're going to try to be maxing out on, because the fact of generating spirit is actually very interesting for a backline and can just help the game altogether. So this is actually the spirit generation that's nice. Any action bar 40% is very high. And if you put some stones, you can get it higher. So then on the third slot, I'm going to say it's pretty nice. It does require that you do the attack first. So again, it requires you to go first. But no one in any team is going to be physically attacking a front line. It's more you trying to steal them or them trying to steal from you. But that's not going to happen unless you try to attack and you have priority. So the chance of this being active is very high to start with. So I would say try to maximize on the fact that it's going to give you some bonus attack power. The crit rate is nice. You can maybe throw some heal ideal. When we look at the stones, I'm going to come back to the option of crit rate. And then the last option is going to be what I consider her best skill, Dragon Essence, because it increases reflex, critical damage. So again, we're talking about crit here, but it's the damage, not the rate. So you want to actually start getting the 100% crit. And it's going to reduce the incoming damage by 40%. So this is why putting her on either side is pretty nice, because that means she's going to survive. And the main problem for players against a striker is the second shot, because with no defenders, it's a striker versus the goalkeeper, and let's be honest, that always ends up with a loss because they get double the damage, and on top of it, if they're a heal goalkeeper, it's really bad. Third is going to be her stones. So stone wise, she's got free green stone. So I'm gonna say that's really not ideal in my opinion. What I would say is we're trying to get her to generate spirit, and she has some really good base crit damage. So looking at the green stones, I would say we would go for a green crit. We would also go for green crit damage. So when we're combining both of those, it's actually going to be very interesting because the crit damage is going to recover spirit with a crit, making again the recovery more important. And it's going to increase critical damage, who by base was nice. And increasing the crit rate will make it basically sure she's going to crit. So we're really maxing out on her crit damage. So that's one of the good uses of it. And if I were to say for a last slot, I would pretty much say that starting with a speed stone, because we're trying to make her go fast, and a critical resistance is really nice. And then we're actually just going to try evolve it or get it to upgrade. That's when we're lucky. Sadly, it always happens on that one stone we wish it doesn't, into an Ancient Stormer. Because that action speed is going to add on again to the base speed. And it's going to recover action bar. So the real reason we're getting it is for the action bar. Now, if you really want to max out on that action bar, you can go and get yourself another Thunder Pen. But if you find her passives are lacking crits or lacking reflex, I would actually say that going towards a light or reflex stone as always is also a pretty decent choice. So this is going to be depending on how well she gets the ball out. The question is, can she get it out? She does damage, but a lot of attackers or midliners or frontliners actually are going to have a pretty good tolerance. Especially if you're going to be facing a Balteon, you're going to be facing a William, you're going to be more damaged than they are. So since you're not healing by base, you might want to think that getting more reflex is a better option. So you just want to dry her out, and until she's max souped, I would pretty much say getting a reflex stone is a better alternative. When you're done with the reflex stone, you can throw in the blue pen. But I mean, again, do you really need that much spirit? Because it's starting to affect your base stats. And yes, I do know a blue pen gives penetration, who's very nice, but there are limitations on its actual value. So since mine is not upgraded in any way, I'm not going to be able to give you any form of gameplay. I barely use Wormwind. I think my only EE is Magnus, so for some reason, I am not seeing him here, but he is somewhere hiding. No, that actually is an error in the player book. I never noticed this one before. Oh well. So Magnus is actually missing from the player book. But the conclusion is, when you're running Rudiel, you want to be running ideally a Wormwind backline or a Wormwind front. Like this, you have a Beatrice. That's where she's really gonna shine the most. But if not, it's not a player on which it's catastrophic if you're not. Just the Beatrice chain can never hurt. And she is a pretty decent player. There are some better alternatives, but in the Wormwind front, she's not bad. So I hope this helped answer a lot of the questions that people were having about her. Thank you very much.